The water turned red before anyone screamed. Corinne's face, smug, entitled, cruel, froze as the paramedics rushed past her toward the child she'd shoved. But when the detective arrived and pulled out the badge, when he knelt beside that crying little girl and whispered, "Daddy's here," Corinne's world didn't just crack. It shattered, because justice wasn't just coming. Justice was already there, and her name was Hoa. The chlorine smell hit Emma Chen the moment she pushed open the gate to the Riverside Community Pool. Her daughter Hoa clutched her hand, the 5-year-old's eyes wide with excitement at the sparkling blue water stretching before them. "Mama, can I go in now, please?" Emma smiled, adjusting the straps of Hoa's pink swimsuit. "Let me set up our spot first, sweetheart. 5 minutes." The pool deck buzzed with Saturday afternoon energy, children splashing in the shallow end. Teenagers clustered around the diving board, parents sprawled on lounge chairs scrolling their phones. Emma found 2 chairs near the kiddie pool, close enough to watch Hoa but far enough from the chaos of the main pool. She'd barely finished spreading their towels when a sharp voice cut through the air. "Excuse me, excuse Emmy, those are our chairs." Emma looked up. A woman stood before her, mid-40s, blonde hair pulled into a severe ponytail, wearing a designer cover-up that probably cost more than Emma's monthly grocery budget. Her lips were pressed into a thin line of disapproval. "I'm sorry," Emma said, genuinely confused. "There was no one here, no towels, no." "We were in the water," the woman gestured vaguely toward the pool. "Obviously, our things are right there." Emma followed her pointing finger. About 15 feet away, a massive pile of belongings was scattered across 4 lounge chairs. Designer bags, expensive sunglasses, tablets, shoes, clothing. It looked like someone had exploded a luxury boutique across the deck. "Those chairs are quite far from these," Emma said carefully, "and there's nothing on these 2. "Are you calling me a liar?" The woman's voice rose sharply, loud enough that heads turned. A teenage lifeguard glanced over nervously but didn't move from his perch. Emma felt Hoa press against her leg. "Mama." "It's okay, baby." Emma kept her voice steady, though her heart was beginning to race. She recognized this type, the kind of person who saw confrontation as entertainment, who'd escalate anything into a scene. "Look, there are plenty of other chairs available. We can just—" "I don't want other chairs. I want those chairs. We were here first." "You weren't at these chairs," Emma said, her patience thinning. "Your things aren't on these chairs. We're not moving." The woman's face flushed red. "Do you know who I am?" "Should I?" "I'm Corinne Whitmore. My husband is Richard Whitmore. He's on the city council and the pool board. I could have you thrown out of here in 5 seconds." Emma felt the familiar weight settle in her chest, the exhaustion of being Asian in spaces where people like Corinne felt entitled to everything. She'd dealt with this before, the assumption that she'd back down, apologize, disappear. "Not today." "Then call him," Emma said quietly. "Call your husband. Let him explain to the pool board why his wife is harassing a mother and child over chairs when there are dozens of empty ones available." Corinne's mouth fell open, genuinely shocked. Clearly, people didn't say no to her often. "You, how dare you speak to me like that? Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" "A woman throwing a tantrum over pool chairs," Emma said. "Now, if you'll excuse us, my daughter would like to swim." She took Hoa's hand and started toward the kiddie pool. Behind her, she could hear Corinne sputtering with rage, but Emma didn't look back. She focused on Hoa's excited babbling about the water, about the slide, about... "Mama!" The scream tore from Hoa's throat. Emma whirled around just in time to see Corinne deliberately stick out her foot. Hoa went flying. Everything slowed down, that horrible crystalline slowness of watching disaster unfold. Hoa's small body airborne, her arms flailing for balance she couldn't find, her face transitioning from surprise to terror. The concrete deck rushed up to meet her. The sound of impact was sickeningly wet. Hoa's head cracked against the ground with a sound Emma would hear in nightmares for the rest of her life. Then the screaming started. "HOA!" Emma lunged forward, her knees hitting the rough concrete as she reached her daughter. Blood pooled beneath Hoa's head, spreading across the pale deck in a widening circle. The little girl's eyes were closed, her body terrifyingly still. "Someone call 911!" Emma's voice ripped from her throat. Her hands shook as she cradled Hoa's head, trying to remember first aid, trying not to panic, trying not to fall apart while her daughter's blood soaked through her fingers. Around them, chaos erupted. Parents snatched their children from the water. The lifeguard finally jumped from his chair, radio crackling. People shouted, phones appeared, someone threw a towel at Emma for the bleeding. And through it all, Karen Whitmore stood frozen, her face pale. "I didn't," she tripped. "I didn't mean." "You pushed her," Emma's scream silenced the deck. "You tripped my daughter." "That's not," it was an accident." "I saw you," a woman's voice rang out. A mom in a one-piece swimsuit pointed at Karen, her phone held high. "I got it on video. You stuck your foot out deliberately." Karen's face drained of all color. I need to speak to my lawyer. I'm not saying anything else. This is assault. She's assaulting me with accusations." "Ma'am, please step back." Two lifeguards approached Karen, gently but firmly creating space between her and Emma. Emma barely registered any of it. Her entire world had narrowed to Hoa's pale face, to the blood that wouldn't stop flowing, to her daughter's chest rising and falling in shallow, rapid breaths. "Baby, stay with me. Stay with Mama. Help is coming. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay." She repeated it like a prayer, like if she said it enough times it would become true. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Karen backed away from the crowd, her manicured hands shaking as she fumbled for her phone. Emma caught fragments of her frantic whisper. "Richard, something happened. I need you. We need our lawyer." The paramedics arrived in a controlled rush, their practiced efficiency somehow both reassuring and terrifying. They eased Emma aside gently but firmly. "Ma'am, we need to work. What's her name?" "Hoa, her name is Hoa. She's 5. She hit her head. There's so much blood." "We've got her. Is there anyone we can call for you?" Emma's mind went blank. Her husband was dead 3 years, cancer. Her parents were in California. She was alone with a bleeding child and a monster in a designer cover-up who just tried to murder her daughter over pool chairs. "I'm coming with her," Emma said. "I'm her mother. I'm all she has." "Of course, we'll make room." As the paramedics stabilized Hoa for transport, Emma caught sight of Karen trying to edge toward the exit gate. A tall man in swim trunks blocked her path. "Pool board needs statements from everyone," he said firmly. "Nobody leaves." Karen's face cycled through emotions, outrage, fear, calculation. "This is ridiculous. I have rights. I don't have to." "Actually, you do." The man's voice carried the weight of authority. "It's pool policy. Police are on their way." "Police?" The word cut through Emma's panic. She needed to tell them what happened. She needed to make sure Karen didn't lie her way out of this, didn't use her husband's connections to. "Mama," the whisper was barely audible, but it was there. Emma's head whipped around. Hoa's eyes had fluttered open, confused and filled with tears. "I'm here, baby. Mama's here." "My head hurts." "I know, sweetheart. The nice people are going to help you. We're going to the hospital, and they're going to make you all better." "That lady," Hoa's small voice cracked, "that lady pushed me." I know she did." The paramedics lifted the stretcher. Emma followed, but not before locking eyes with Karen one final time. Karen stared back, and in that moment Emma saw it, the calculation happening behind those eyes. The woman was already building her story, already planning her defense, already preparing to use money and influence to escape consequences. Emma had seen it before. People like Karen always did. But then a black sedan pulled into the parking lot with a speed that suggested urgency. A man in his 30s stepped out, his wet hair suggesting he'd come from swimming somewhere else. He wore swim trunks and a t-shirt, casual Saturday wear. But the badge clipped to his belt wasn't casual at all. Detective James Morrison took one look at the scene. The blood on the concrete, the small girl on the stretcher, the crowd of witnesses, and the woman in the designer cover-up trying to look innocent. And his jaw tightened. He strode across the deck with purpose, his detective's eyes cataloging everything. When he reached the stretcher, he glanced at the paramedics. "Head injury?" "Yes, sir. Possible concussion, lacerations, monitoring for skull fracture." Morrison nodded, then looked at Emma. "Ma'am, are you the mother?" "Yes, Emma Chen. This is my daughter, Hoa." Something flickered across Morrison's face, an emotion Emma couldn't quite read. He glanced down at Hoa, and his expression softened almost imperceptibly. "My daughter's name is Sophie," he said quietly. "She's 6. I know how scary this is." Emma felt tears prick her eyes at the unexpected kindness. Morrison straightened, his face hardening as he turned toward Karen. "I'm Detective Morrison. I need statements from everyone, but first," he raised his voice, addressing the crowd. "Did anyone witness what happened?" A dozen hands shot up. Karen's face went white. The hospital emergency room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Emma sat in a plastic chair that squeaked every time she shifted, watching through the partially open curtain as two nurses worked over Hoa. Her daughter had been conscious during the ambulance ride, whimpering about her head, asking why the mean lady had hurt her. Emma had no answer that made sense to a 5-year-old. "Mrs. Chen." She looked up. A doctor in blue scrubs stood before her, his expression professionally neutral. Emma's stomach clenched. "It's Ms. Chen, is she?" "Your daughter has a concussion and a 3-inch laceration on her scalp that required 12 stitches. We've done a CT scan, and there's no skull fracture, but we're keeping her overnight for observation. Head injuries in children require careful monitoring." The words washed over Emma like cold water. Concussion, 12 stitches, overnight observation. "But she'll be okay." "Barring any complications, yes. Children are remarkably resilient, but Ms. Chen," the doctor's voice lowered, "the police are here. They want to speak with you. Given the nature of her injuries and the circumstances, this is being investigated as assault." "Assault?" The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Someone had assaulted her 5-year-old daughter over pool chairs. "I'll talk to them," Emma said. "Can I see Hoa first?" 5 minutes. She's sedated. We gave her something for the pain." Emma slipped behind the curtain. Hoa looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, her black hair stark against the white pillow, a thick bandage wrapped around her head. An IV snaked into her tiny arm. Her eyes were closed, her breathing steady but shallow. Emma took her daughter's hand, careful of the IV line, and felt hot tears finally spill down her cheeks. She'd held it together through the ambulance ride, through the intake process, through the terrifying wait while they took Hoa for the CT scan. But seeing her here, broken and bandaged because some entitled woman couldn't handle being told no. "Ms. Chen." Emma turned. Detective Morrison stood at the curtain's edge, giving her space but making his presence known. Up close, she could see the lines of tension around his eyes, the set of his jaw that spoke of controlled anger. "I need to ask you some questions," he said. "But first, how is she?" "Concussion, 12 stitches. They're keeping her overnight." Morrison's jaw tightened further. "I have 3 witness statements already and a video that shows everything. I need your account of what happened from the beginning." Emma told him. The chairs, Karen's escalation, the deliberate trip, the sound of Hoa's head hitting concrete. Her voice remained steady through most of it, clinical almost, but cracked when she described the blood pooling on the deck. Morrison took notes, his pen moving quickly across a small notebook. When Emma finished, he looked up. "The woman who tripped your daughter is Karen Whitmore. She's claiming it was an accident, that she was simply standing there and your daughter ran into her foot." "That's a lie." "I know, I have it on video from 3 different angles. Mrs. Whitmore doesn't know that yet." Morrison's smile was cold. "She also doesn't know that one of those videos shows her arguing with you, clearly angry, and then deliberately positioning herself in Hoa's path with her foot extended." Relief flooded through Emma. "So you'll arrest her?" "I already have. Assault in the 3rd degree, reckless endangerment of a minor. Given her husband's position, she'll probably make bail within hours, but the charges are filed. The district attorney will decide if we upgrade to more serious charges depending on Hoa's recovery." "Her husband is on the city council," Emma said bitterly. "She was threatening to have me thrown out of the pool because of it." Something dark flickered across Morrison's face. "Richard Whitmore. Yes, I know him. He's called my captain 3 times in the last hour demanding I drop the investigation." And my captain told him to go to hell." Morrison's smile held no warmth. "We don't drop assault cases against children because someone's husband plays politics. The optics alone would destroy careers." Emma felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "Thank you." "Don't thank me for doing my job." Morrison glanced toward Hoa and his expression softened again. "I have a daughter, Ms. Chen. If someone did this to Sophie—" He stopped himself, professional mask sliding back into place. "Mrs. Whitmore will be arraigned Monday morning. I'll need you to come to the station sometime this week to give a formal statement. I'll also need permission to interview Hoa when she's feeling better." Whatever you need. Morrison nodded and turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. The woman who took the video, Sarah Martinez, she's a teacher. She said Mrs. Whitmore has a history of this kind of behavior at the pool. Confrontations, entitlement, low-level bullying. Nothing that ever escalated to violence before, but a pattern. That pattern is going to matter in court. After Morrison left, Emma sat beside Hoa's bed and let herself fall apart quietly, tears streaming down her face as the adrenaline finally crashed. She was still crying when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Chen, a woman's voice, crisp and professional. This is Patricia Kingsley. I'm an attorney with Morrison, Chen, and Associates, no relation to the detective, ironically. Sarah Martinez gave me your number. She's a friend of mine, and when she told me what happened, I wanted to reach out. Emma wiped her eyes. I don't understand. I want to represent you, pro bono. I what? Ms. Chen, what happened to your daughter is unconscionable. Corinne Whitmore needs to face consequences, and I don't just mean criminal charges. I'm talking about a civil suit. Assault, emotional distress, medical expenses, trauma counseling for Hoa. I've been looking for a case like this. Someone who will stand up to the Whitmores and their circle of entitled sociopaths. I can't afford. Pro bono means free. I cover all costs. If we win, I take a percentage of the settlement. If we lose, you owe me nothing. Patricia's voice turned fierce. But we won't lose, not with 3 videos, a dozen witnesses, and a detective who actually gives a damn about justice. Emma's head spun. I need to think about it. Of course, I'll email you my information. Take your time. But Ms. Chen, I've dealt with people like Corinne Whitmore my entire career. They think money and connections make them untouchable. Sometimes they need to learn otherwise. After hanging up, Emma stared at her phone. A lawsuit, criminal charges, her daughter in a hospital bed with 12 stitches in her head. All because of pool chairs. Across town, in a McMansion in the gated community of Riverside Heights, Corinne Whitmore paced her marble-floored living room while her husband Richard sat on a leather sofa, his face red with barely controlled rage. How could you be so stupid? Richard's voice cracked like a whip. Do you have any idea what you've done? It was an accident, Corinne's voice pitched high, defensive. That woman was so rude and her child just ran into my foot. There's video, Corinne. 3 videos. The detective showed me on his phone. You deliberately stuck your foot out and tripped a 5-year-old child hard enough to crack her head open on concrete. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened. Richard surged to his feet. I've spent the last 4 hours calling in every favor I have, and guess what? Nobody wants to touch this. Nobody wants to be the person who helped cover up an assault on a child. Do you understand? This isn't shoplifting or a DUI. You hurt a child, Corinne, badly. Corinne's face crumpled. But we have money, we have connections, your lawyer said. My lawyer said we're fucked, his exact words. Richard ran his hands through his hair. The best he can do is try to negotiate a plea deal, reduced charges, probation, community service, anger management classes. But Corinne, you're going to have a criminal record. That's unavoidable now. This is insane. Over pool chairs. That woman should have just moved. Richard stared at his wife like he was seeing her for the first time. You almost killed a child because she wouldn't give you pool chairs. Do you hear yourself? I didn't almost. She's fine. The detective said she's fine. She has 12 stitches in her scalp and a concussion. She's 5 years old. Richard's voice dropped to something more dangerous than shouting. And that's not even the worst part. Do you know who that child is? Corinne blinked. What? Her name is Hoa Chen. Her father was David Chen, Dr. David Chen, the oncologist who ran the free clinic downtown. He died 3 years ago, cancer. He was beloved in this city, Corinne. People set up scholarships in his name, and you just assaulted his daughter in front of dozens of witnesses. The color drained from Corinne's face. Oh, it gets better, Richard continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. That detective, James Morrison, his wife died of cancer 2 years ago. Dr. Chen treated her for free when they couldn't afford the bills. Morrison has a personal reason to make sure this case goes exactly by the book, and guess what? He's known for being absolutely incorruptible. Corinne sank onto the sofa, her hands shaking. This can't be happening. It is happening. And Corinne, Richard's voice went cold. I'm done protecting you. I've built my career on being a family man, on community values, on protecting children. My entire political future is on the line because you can't control your temper for 5 minutes. You're my husband, and you're a liability. My lawyer will handle your case, but we're also filing for separation. I want you out of this house by the end of the week. Corinne's head snapped up. You can't be serious. Watch me. Richard grabbed his keys from the side table. I have a council meeting Monday morning. I'm going to have to stand up in front of the people who elected me and explain why my wife is being charged with assaulting a child. Do you have any idea how that's going to play? He walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at his wife. This woman he'd been married to for 20 years, who he suddenly realized he didn't know at all. You know what the worst part is? Richard said quietly. I used to make excuses for you, tell myself you were just confident, just assertive, just standing your ground. But you're not any of those things, you're just cruel. And you were cruel to the wrong person this time. The door slammed behind him. Corinne sat alone in her marble palace, surrounded by designer furniture and expensive art, and for the first time in her life felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We got it all on video, Corinne. The whole thing, you're going viral. Check Twitter. With shaking hands, Corinne opened Twitter. The first video had 2.3 million views. The caption read, entitled Corinne ASSAULTS 5-year-old over pool CHAIRS. This is what privilege looks like. The comments were worse. Someone identify this woman. She needs to lose everything. That poor baby, I hope they throw the book at this psycho. White woman assaults Asian child and tries to play victim. Tale as old as time. Corinne's phone rang, her lawyer. Corinne, don't talk to anyone. Don't post anything online. Don't leave your house. The internet has decided you're the villain and anything you say will be used against you. He paused. And Corinne, start looking for a criminal defense attorney. This is beyond my expertise now. She hung up and opened her laptop, searching her own name. The results multiplied by the second. News articles, blog posts, social media threads. Her face plastered across screens with words like assault, racist, entitled, Karen, that mocking use of her own name that had become shorthand for women like her. Her carefully curated Instagram, deleted by platform moderators for harassment. Her Facebook, flooded with thousands of comments demanding justice. Her email, overflowing with messages ranging from legal threats to detailed descriptions of what people hoped would happen to her in prison. Everything she'd built, her social standing, her reputation, her carefully maintained image as a sophisticated woman of means, was disintegrating in real time. All because she couldn't let someone have 2 pool chairs. All because she had to win. All because a 5-year-old girl named Hoa wouldn't disappear when her mother refused to back down. Corinne Whitmore sat in her empty house, surrounded by the ruins of her life, and realized something terrifying. This was only the beginning. Monday morning arrived with the weight of judgment. Emma sat in the courtroom's public gallery, her mother beside her. Linda Chen had flown in from California the moment Emma called, arriving Sunday night to find her granddaughter sleeping fitfully in a hospital bed, whimpering every time she shifted and jostled her injured head. I still can't believe this happened, Linda whispered, her accent thickening with emotion. David would be, she stopped, unable to finish. Emma squeezed her mother's hand. David would be devastated. Her husband had spent his career healing people, offering compassion to the most vulnerable. To know his daughter had been hurt by someone's casual cruelty would have destroyed him. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmur of the crowded courtroom. All rise, the Honorable Judge Patricia Mendoza presiding. Judge Mendoza entered, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and eyes that suggested she'd seen every manipulation attempt in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. She settled behind the bench with the air of someone who took her job very seriously. Please be seated. Case number 2025 CR 8847, The People versus Corinne Elizabeth Whitmore. The side door opened, and Corinne walked in flanked by 2 lawyers in expensive suits. She looked nothing like the woman from the pool, gone were the designer cover-up and confidence. Today she wore a conservative navy dress, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a humble style that screamed, I'm not a threat. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands clasped in front of her in a posture of contrition. Emma felt rage bubble up in her throat. Karen was performing, playing the victim. Ms. Whitmore is charged with assault in the third degree and reckless endangerment of a child, the prosecutor announced. She was a sharp-faced woman named Jennifer Zhao, who'd met with Emma the previous day and promised to fight hard. The people request that bail be set at $50,000. Karen's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Douglas Brennan, who apparently commanded $800 an hour, stepped forward. Your Honor, Mrs. Whitmore is a respected member of this community with no prior criminal record. She has deep roots here. Her husband serves on the city council. She's not a flight risk. We request release on her own recognizance. Your Honor, if I may, Zhao interjected. Mrs. Whitmore's actions sent a 5-year-old child to the hospital with a concussion and 12 stitches. The child, Hoa Chen, is the daughter of the late Dr. David Chen, who— I'm aware of who Dr. Chen was, Judge Mendoza said, her tone suggesting the name carried weight. She looked at Karen over her reading glasses. Mrs. Whitmore, you're accused of deliberately tripping a child half a decade old, causing serious injury. What do you have to say for yourself? Karen's voice trembled when she spoke, barely audible. Your Honor, it was an accident. I would never intentionally hurt a child. I'm a mother myself. I have 2 sons. I was just standing there and the little girl ran into my foot. I'm devastated this happened. Your Honor, we have 3 separate videos that contradict that statement, Zhao said sharply. Mrs. Whitmore clearly and deliberately extended her foot into the child's path after a verbal altercation with the child's mother. This wasn't an accident. This was assault. Judge Mendoza held out her hand. Let me see the video. The bailiff brought over a tablet. The courtroom fell silent as the judge watched, her expression darkening with each passing second. Emma couldn't see the screen, but she didn't need to. She'd watched those videos dozens of times, each viewing making her angrier. When it finished, Judge Mendoza set the tablet down with deliberate care. Mr. Brennan, I've been a judge for 23 years. I've seen every excuse, every performance, every attempt at manipulation. What I just watched was not an accident. Her voice could have cut glass. I watched your client argue with Ms. Chen, watched her deliberately position herself, watched her stick out her foot at the exact moment that child walked by. Then I watched a 5-year-old's head bounce off concrete like a basketball. Karen's face crumpled. Real tears this time, Emma noted with vicious satisfaction. Bail is set at $100,000, Judge Mendoza continued. Mrs. Whitmore will surrender her passport. She is prohibited from contacting the victim or the victim's family in any way. She will enroll in anger management classes immediately. Next court date is set for— she consulted her calendar— April 15th for preliminary hearing. Mrs. Whitmore, I strongly suggest you spend the next few weeks thinking about the consequences of your actions and whether a plea deal might be in your best interest. The gavel cracked down. Karen's lawyers immediately huddled around her, voices low and urgent. Emma caught fragments. Appeal the bail amount. Get you out today. Need to discuss plea options. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. News vans lined the street, reporters jockeying for position. The videos had gone viral, 15 million views and counting, and suddenly Karen Whitmore's case had become a lightning rod for conversations about privilege, entitlement, racism, and justice. Emma tried to slip past the cameras, but a reporter thrust a microphone in her face. Ms. Chen, how do you feel about the arraignment? Are you satisfied with the charges? My daughter has 12 stitches in her head because a grown woman couldn't handle being told no, Emma said, her voice steady despite the cameras. I want Karen Whitmore to face the full consequences of her actions. That's all. Some people online are calling this a racially motivated attack. Do you think? I think a woman hurt my child over pool chairs. I don't know what was in her heart. I only know what she did. Emma's voice hardened. And what she did was assault a 5-year-old. More questions flew, but Linda guided Emma toward their car. As they pulled away, Emma saw Karen emerge from the courthouse, surrounded by lawyers and courthouse security. The crowd surged forward, angry shouts mixing with reporters' questions. How does it feel to be America's most hated woman? Did you target that child because she was Asian? Do you have any remorse? Karen kept her head down, saying nothing, letting her lawyers shield her as they rushed toward a waiting car. But not before someone in the crowd threw a cup of coffee that splattered across her navy dress. Security tackled the thrower, but the damage was done. Corinne's carefully crafted image of contrition was replaced by footage of her fleeing while people screamed that she was a monster. By evening, that footage had 2 million views. Patricia Kingsley sat across from Emma in a coffee shop near the hospital, a thick folder spread between them. "I've filed the civil suit," Patricia said. "We're seeking damages for medical expenses, pain and suffering, emotional distress, and punitive damages to send a message that this behavior has consequences." "How much?" Emma asked. $5 million. Emma nearly choked on her coffee. $5 million, that's conservative, actually. Your daughter suffered a traumatic brain injury at age 5. She'll need monitoring for years. She may have cognitive issues we don't know about yet. She'll need therapy to process the trauma. And Corinne Whitmore did this deliberately in public in front of witnesses over something as trivial as pool chairs. Patricia's eyes were sharp. Punitive damages exist to punish behavior and deter others from similar actions. Corinne Whitmore needs to understand that her wealth and connections don't make her immune to consequences. The Whitmores are rich, but $5 million. They have insurance, umbrella policies, assets, and Richard Whitmore is already trying to distance himself. He filed for separation 2 days ago. Patricia smiled grimly. Which means Corinne's about to discover that her comfortable life was built on her husband's money and reputation, both of which are disappearing fast. Emma thought about that. About Corinne losing everything, her marriage, her social standing, her freedom, her money. It should have felt satisfying. Instead, it just felt exhausting. "Ms. Chen, Emma, I need to be honest with you." Patricia's tone shifted. "This case is going to get ugly. Corinne's lawyers will try to paint you as opportunistic, as using your daughter's injury for a payday. They'll dig into your life looking for anything they can use. They'll bring up David's death, suggest you're an unfit parent, claim Hoa's injury wasn't that serious. It's going to be invasive and painful." "Let them try," Emma said quietly. "I have nothing to hide. I'm a good mother. David was a good father. And our daughter was hurt because a woman couldn't control her temper. No amount of lawyer tricks changes that." Patricia nodded, respect in her eyes. "Good, because we're going to win this. Not just for Hoa, but for every person who's ever been bullied by someone like Corinne Whitmore and felt powerless to fight back." That night, Emma sat beside Hoa's hospital bed. They were being discharged in the morning, finally going home. Hoa was watching cartoons on the hospital TV, her small hand wrapped around Emma's. "Mama, why did that lady hurt me?" The question came out of nowhere, soft and confused. Emma had been dreading it. "Sometimes people make very bad choices when they're angry," Emma said carefully. "That lady was angry at Mama and she hurt you because of it, but it wasn't your fault. Nothing you did was wrong." "Is she going to hurt me again?" "No, baby, she's not allowed to come near you. The police made a rule." "Good," Hoa turned back to the TV, seemingly satisfied. Then quieter. "I was scared, Mama." "I know, sweetheart, I was scared too." "But you were brave." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "You were the brave one." "We were both brave." Hoa snuggled closer, careful of her bandaged head. "Like Daddy was brave when he was sick." Emma's breath caught. Hoa rarely mentioned David. She'd been so young when he died, her memories of him were fragmented, more feeling than concrete recollection. "Yes," Emma whispered, "like Daddy was brave." Her phone buzzed, a text from Detective Morrison. "Corinne made bail an hour ago. $100K. She's out, but ankle monitor and strict orders not to contact you. Wanted you to know, call if you need anything." Emma stared at the message. Corinne was out there somewhere, probably in her big house, probably surrounded by lawyers strategizing how to minimize her punishment. But she wasn't free. The court of public opinion had already convicted her. The internet had doxed her completely. Address, phone numbers, social media accounts, her children's school, her husband's office. People were calling for her to be fired from every volunteer position she held. Businesses were distancing themselves from anything Whitmore-related. A GoFundMe for Hoa's medical expenses had raised $300,000 in 2 days, while a counter GoFundMe for Corinne's legal defense had raised $17 before being shut down for violating terms of service. Corinne Whitmore was learning what it meant to be hated by millions. Emma should have felt vindicated. Instead, she just felt tired. She looked at her daughter, already half asleep despite the cartoon still playing. her small body healing from an injury it should never have suffered. Hoa had a long road ahead: physical therapy, psychological counseling, regular neurological checkups to ensure the concussion didn't have lasting effects. All because one woman couldn't handle being told no. Emma's phone buzzed again. This time, an email from Patricia Kingsley with the subject line, "Corinne's lawyers want to talk settlement." Emma opened it, her heart beating faster. Douglas Brennan reached out. They want to settle before this goes to trial. Initial offer, $250,000 and a written apology. I told them to go to hell but wanted you to know. They're scared, Emma. We have them on the ropes. $250,000. Written apology. No trial, no more publicity, no dragging Hoa through testimony. It was tempting. But Emma thought about Corinne's face at the pool, that entitled sneer, that absolute certainty that she'd win because she always won. Thought about that deliberate foot extension, the casual cruelty of hurting a child to win an argument. Emma typed back, "No settlement. I want a jury to hear what she did. I want her to face consequences, real ones, not just writing a check." Patricia's response came 30 seconds later. "That's my girl. Let's make her regret every second of this." Emma set her phone down and took Hoa's hand again, feeling the small fingers curl around hers in sleep. "We're going to be okay, baby," she whispered. "I promise justice is coming." Outside, somewhere in the city, Corinne Whitmore sat in her empty house, her ankle monitor charging, her phone exploding with hate messages, her life crumbling around her. And Detective James Morrison sat at his desk, reviewing the evidence one more time, thinking about his late wife, thinking about Dr. David Chen, who'd treated her with such kindness, thinking about how that man's daughter had been hurt by someone who'd never faced real consequences for anything in her life. He picked up his phone and dialed the DA's office. "Jennifer, Morrison, about the Whitmore case. I think we need to talk about upgrading the charges." The wheels of justice turned slowly. But they were turning. And Corinne Whitmore was directly in their path. Retry the Instagram post appeared at 2:47 a.m., 3 days after Corinne made bail. Emma was awake. She'd barely slept since the incident, startling awake at the slightest sound from Hoa's room. She was scrolling mindlessly through her phone when the notification appeared. "At Truthseeker 2025 tagged you in a post." The image showed Corinne Whitmore at what appeared to be a restaurant, wine glass in hand, laughing with friends. The caption read, "While 5-year-old Hoa Chen recovers from a concussion, Corinne Whitmore is out living her best life." This was taken yesterday at Bella Vista. She's out on bail for assaulting a child and she's having wine nights with friends. Where's the remorse? Where's the accountability? At Emma J. Chen deserves better. Hoa deserves better. Justice for Hoa Karen Whitmore. Emma stared at the post, her stomach churning. The photo had 45,000 likes already. The comments were vicious. "Sociopath behavior. Hope she chokes on that wine. How is she even allowed out in public? Someone needs to make her life as miserable as she made that baby's life." Emma's phone rang. Patricia Kingsley calling at 3 a.m. "Emma, don't look at social media. I know it's too late, but..." "I saw it. That photo is going to complicate things. Corinne's lawyers will argue she's being harassed, that she can't get a fair trial because of public opinion. But honestly," Patricia's voice held grim satisfaction, "she just handed us a gift. She's out drinking wine and laughing while your daughter still has headaches and nightmares. A jury is going to see that and despise her." "Patricia, people are threatening her, death threats, some of these comments. Are you feeling sorry for her?" Emma paused. Was she? "No, but this is getting out of control." "Emma, Corinne Whitmore hurt your child and showed no remorse. She tried to use her privilege to make the whole thing disappear. She deserves everything she's getting." After hanging up, Emma couldn't fall back asleep. She thought about David, about what he would say. Her husband had believed in compassion, in rehabilitation, in the fundamental goodness of people even when they did terrible things. But David had never had to watch his daughter bleed on concrete because someone was having a tantrum. By morning, the restaurant photo had exploded into national news. Think pieces proliferated. The privilege of Corinne Whitmore, when white women weaponize violence, the two-tiered justice system on full display. Corinne's lawyers held an emergency press conference. Douglas Brennan stood behind a podium, Corinne conspicuously absent. My client has been subjected to a campaign of harassment and threats that goes far beyond reasonable public discourse. She cannot leave her home without being accosted. Her children have been threatened at school. Her elderly mother received death threats. This mob mentality is un-American and unjust. A reporter shouted from the crowd. She assaulted a 5-year-old. She's out on bail and partying at expensive restaurants. My client is presumed innocent until proven guilty. She has a right to live her life while awaiting trial. The photo circulating online was taken out of context. Mrs. Whitmore was meeting with friends to discuss her legal defense, not partying, as has been suggested. Why hasn't she apologized to the Chen family? On advice of counsel, Mrs. Whitmore has been advised not to contact the alleged victim's family. Alleged victim, there's video evidence. This press conference is over. Brennan gathered his papers and fled the podium as questions rained down. The performance backfired spectacularly. By noon, #alleged victim was trending, with thousands of people posting photos of Hoa's bandaged head alongside Corinne's wine-glass-raising smile. Detective Morrison called Emma that afternoon. I wanted to give you a heads up before you hear it elsewhere. We're upgrading the charges. Emma's breath caught. To what? Assault in the 2nd degree, intentional causing of physical injury to a person under 11. It's a felony. If convicted, she's looking at up to 7 years in prison. 7 years. The DA reviewed all the evidence, Morrison continued. The videos show clear intent. The injury was serious, and Corinne's behavior since the arrest, the restaurant photo, her lawyer calling Hoa an alleged victim, it shows a pattern of remorselessness that strengthens our case. Will she fight it? Her lawyers are already scrambling. Brennan called the DA this morning offering a plea deal, guilty to the original misdemeanor charge, 6 months suspended sentence, anger management, community service, and a written apology. And Jennifer Zhao rejected it. She wants this to go to trial. She thinks a jury will convict, and she wants to send a message that assaulting children has serious consequences, regardless of who your husband is or how much money you have. After Morrison hung up, Emma sat in silence. 7 years. Hoa would be 12 when Corinne got out, if she served the full sentence, which she probably wouldn't, but still. Prison time, real consequences. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You're destroying my life. My children are being bullied. My mother is sick from stress. I made a mistake and I'm sorry. Please drop the lawsuit. Please tell them to stop. I'm begging you. Emma stared at the message. Corinne had found a way to contact her despite the restraining order, probably a burner phone. She should report it to Morrison. It was a violation of the court order. Instead, Emma typed back, your life is destroyed because of your choices. You hurt my daughter. You showed no remorse. You went out drinking and laughing while she recovered from the concussion you gave her. I didn't destroy your life, Corinne. You did. The response came immediately. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. My lawyers said not to contact you. I'm not a monster. I'm a mother just like you. Emma's fingers flew across the keyboard. A mother doesn't hurt children. Delete this number. Don't contact me again. If you do, I'm reporting it to Detective Morrison. She blocked the number and called Morrison anyway. She texted you? Morrison's voice went hard. From what number? Emma read it off. I'll trace it. That's a violation of her bail conditions. Judge Mendoza is not going to be happy. The next court appearance came faster than expected. Corinne was hauled before Judge Mendoza for violating the no-contact order, her lawyers arguing she was emotionally distraught and not thinking clearly. Judge Mendoza's expression could have frozen lava. Mrs. Whitmore, you were explicitly ordered not to contact the victim or the victim's family. You violated that order less than a week after making bail. Do you think the rules don't apply to you? Corinne, for once, had no performance left. She looked genuinely terrified. Your Honor, I just wanted to apologize. I wanted Ms. Chen to know I'm sorry. My lawyers won't let me say anything publicly, and I needed her to know I'm not a monster. You wanted to apologize, Judge Mendoza repeated flatly. So you violated a court order, potentially jeopardizing your bail status, to send text messages to a woman whose 5-year-old daughter you put in the hospital. Yes, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking. You weren't thinking when you tripped that child. You weren't thinking when you went out to dinner while she recovered from her injuries. You weren't thinking when you sent those texts. Mrs. Whitmore, you seem to spend a great deal of time not thinking. Judge Mendoza leaned forward. I'm adding electronic monitoring to your bail conditions. You will wear a GPS tracker. You will not leave your residence except for attorney meetings, court appearances, and 1 hour per day for necessary errands. You will surrender all phones except one monitored device. If you violate these conditions, I will revoke your bail entirely. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Corinne's voice was barely a whisper. And Mrs. Whitmore, if you contact Ms. Chen or her family again, I will hold you in contempt and you will spend the rest of your pretrial period in jail. Are we clear? Yes, Your Honor. Emma watched from the gallery as Corinne was fitted with a second ankle monitor, this one with GPS tracking. Corinne's face was blotchy from crying, her expensive lawyers flanking her like prison guards. Outside, the media circus had grown, national news trucks now. Emma recognized a CNN correspondent, an MSNBC anchor. Ms. Chen, a reporter thrust a microphone at her. How do you feel about Corinne Whitmore violating the restraining order to contact you? I feel like she still doesn't understand what she did, Emma said. She texted me saying I'm destroying her life, but her life is destroyed because she made a choice to hurt my daughter. That's not on me. That's on her. Do you have any sympathy for her? Her children are being harassed online. Her mother is reportedly ill. I have sympathy for any child being harassed, Emma said carefully. Corinne's children didn't hurt Hoa. They shouldn't be punished for their mother's actions. But Corinne herself, Emma's voice hardened. Corinne had every opportunity to make different choices. She chose violence. She chose to show no remorse. She chose to go out drinking while my daughter recovered. Every consequence she's facing is a direct result of her own decisions. The clip went viral within hours. Emma's calm, measured response contrasted sharply with Corinne's increasingly unhinged behavior. Public opinion, already strongly against Corinne, solidified into concrete certainty. Corinne Whitmore was guilty, and she deserved everything coming to her. 3 weeks later, Patricia Kingsley called with news. Corinne's team is back with another settlement offer. $500,000, a public apology read in court, mandatory anger management and therapy, and she'll plead guilty to the misdemeanor charge with a suspended sentence. No. Emma, think about this. $500,000, that's Hoa's college fund, that's security for years, and you'd have a public apology on record. And she'd avoid prison time, she'd get away with it. She wouldn't get away with it. She'd have a criminal record, she'd be publicly humiliated, she'd write a check and move on with her life. Emma's voice was steel. No, I want the trial. I want a jury to hear what she did. I want her to face real consequences. Patricia was quiet for a moment. You know there's a risk, right? Juries are unpredictable. If we go to trial and lose. Then we lose, but at least we fought. At least we didn't let her buy her way out. Okay, Patricia's voice shifted, pride evident. Then we go to trial. Discovery starts next week. It's going to be brutal, Emma. They're going to subpoena your medical records, Hoa's school records, David's death certificate. They're going to paint you as a money-hungry widow exploiting her daughter's injury. Let them try. The truth is on our side. But that night, Emma lay awake wondering if she was making the right choice. $500,000 would change their lives. Hoa would never have to worry about college debt. They could move to a better neighborhood, a better school district. But every time Emma closed her eyes, she saw Corinne's foot extending deliberately, saw Hoa's small body flying through the air, heard the sickening crack of her daughter's head hitting concrete. Some things couldn't be fixed with money. Some things required justice. The discovery phase was exactly as brutal as Patricia had promised. Corinne's lawyers subpoenaed everything: Emma's employment records, her financial statements, her therapy sessions after David died. They interviewed Hoa's teachers, her pediatrician, their neighbors. They were looking for anything to suggest Emma was an unfit mother, that Hoa was accident-prone, that David's death had somehow made Emma unstable and opportunistic. They found nothing, because there was nothing to find. Emma was a good mother. She worked as a medical transcriptionist from home so she could be present for Hoa. Her finances were modest but stable. Her grief over David was real and well-documented, but it hadn't made her neglectful or unstable. The worst thing Corinne's lawyers found was a parking ticket from 2023. Meanwhile, Patricia's team was building their case. They interviewed the dozen witnesses from the pool. They had 3 videos from multiple angles, all showing Karen deliberately extending her foot. They had testimony from Sarah Martinez, the teacher who'd filmed the incident, about Karen's history of aggressive behavior at the pool. And they had Karen's own text messages to Emma, a clear violation of the no-contact order that demonstrated a pattern of believing rules didn't apply to her. But the real bombshell came in week 3 of discovery. Patricia called Emma, her voice tight with barely controlled excitement. "Emma, sit down, you need to hear this." "What happened?" "Karen's lawyers just handed us their witness list. Guess who they're planning to call as a character witness?" "I have no idea." "Richard Whitmore." Emma's breath caught. Her husband, the one who filed for separation. Ex-husband now, the separation became a divorce last week, and apparently he's willing to testify. Patricia's voice held savage satisfaction. "Against her." "What?" "Richard Whitmore is cooperating with the prosecution. He's going to testify about Karen's pattern of aggressive behavior, her sense of entitlement, incidents he witnessed where she verbally abused service workers, threatened neighbors, and once allegedly struck their housekeeper." Patricia paused. "Emma, he's burning her to the ground to save his political career." Emma should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt something closer to horror. He's her husband, how can he? Ex-husband, and he's decided that his political future matters more than his marriage vows. Can't say I blame him. His constituents were calling for his resignation. This is his way of showing he doesn't condone her behavior. "Patricia, Emma struggled for words, "that's cruel. That's justice. Karen destroyed her own marriage. Richard is just making sure she doesn't take him down with her." After hanging up, Emma sat in silence. She thought about Karen, alone in her house with 2 ankle monitors, her children gone to her ex-husband's new apartment, her mother too ill to visit, every friend and ally abandoning ship. Emma had wanted consequences. She was getting them. But consequences looked different up close than they did from a distance. Her phone buzzed. A text from Detective Morrison, trial date set, June 15th. "Make sure you're ready, this is going to be a circus." Emma looked at the calendar. June 15th, 2 months away. 2 months for Karen to sit in her empty house and contemplate what she'd done. 2 months for Emma to wonder if she was seeking justice or vengeance. 2 months for Hoa to continue healing, physically and emotionally, from an injury she never should have suffered. Emma walked to Hoa's room. Her daughter was asleep, the bandages finally removed, a thin pink scar visible at her hairline, a permanent reminder of the day a woman's tantrum became violence. "I'm doing the right thing," Emma whispered to the sleeping child. "Aren't I?" Hoa didn't answer. But somewhere across town, in a house that was once filled with laughter and entitlement and the easy confidence of someone who'd never faced consequences, Karen Whitmore sat alone in the dark, her ankle monitors blinking in the shadows, and finally began to understand what she'd done. Justice was coming, and it had her name on it. The weeks before trial moved with agonizing slowness for Emma, but for Karen Whitmore, they collapsed like a house of cards in a windstorm. The first card fell when Richard Whitmore's tell-all interview aired on 60 Minutes. Emma watched it with her mother, Hoa safely asleep upstairs. Richard sat across from the interviewer, composed and remorseful, playing the role of the deceived husband perfectly. "I thought I knew my wife," Richard said, his voice heavy with carefully practiced regret. "But watching that video, seeing her deliberately hurt a child, a 5-year-old child, I realized I'd been making excuses for her behavior for years." "What kind of behavior?" the interviewer pressed. "Karen has always had a temper. She'd snap at waiters, berate retail workers, get into arguments with neighbors over trivial things. I told myself she was just assertive, that she didn't take disrespect. But it wasn't about respect. It was about control." Richard leaned forward, the picture of sincere contrition. "After Dr. Chen's daughter was hurt, I started really looking at my marriage. I found text messages where Karen mocked service workers, called them degrading names. I remembered incidents I'd witnessed but dismissed, and I realized my wife is a bully, and I enabled her by looking the other way. Some people have said you're only speaking out now to save your political career." Richard's jaw tightened, the only crack in his performance. "My career is important to me, yes, but my children are more important. My sons were being harassed at school because of their mother's actions. I had to show them that there are consequences for cruelty, that power and privilege don't excuse hurting others. Will you testify against your wife at trial? If called upon, yes. The truth matters more than my marriage. The interview ended with Richard pledging to donate $50,000 to anti-bullying programs in Dr. David Chen's name. A calculated move that earned him praise from commentators and a wave of sympathy from voters who'd been calling for his resignation. Emma turned off the TV, feeling sick. "That man is a snake," Linda said quietly. "He's using your granddaughter's pain to rebuild his image." "He's also telling the truth about Karen," Emma replied. "Does it matter why he's doing it?" "I suppose not, but I don't have to like it." Neither did Emma, but she understood it. In the arena of public opinion, everyone was scrambling to be on the right side of history. Richard had simply chosen survival over loyalty. The second card fell when Karen's sister gave an interview to a tabloid. "My sister is not a monster." The real Karen Whitmore screamed the headline, accompanied by childhood photos and carefully curated anecdotes designed to humanize the woman America loved to hate. Patricia read excerpts aloud during their next meeting, her voice dripping with disdain. "Karen was always protective of me growing up," Patricia quoted. "She stood up to bullies, defended the underdog, helped anyone who needed it. The woman in those videos is not the sister I know. She made a terrible mistake in a moment of anger, but she's not evil, she's human." "The sister is trying to help," Emma said. "The sister is making it worse. She's confirming that Karen has anger issues and acts impulsively when upset, which is exactly what we're arguing caused her to assault Hoa." Patricia closed the magazine. "Karen's legal team is furious about this interview. They specifically told the family not to talk to media, and her sister just handed us ammunition." The interview had another effect. It split public opinion slightly. A small but vocal minority began arguing that Karen was being subjected to disproportionate punishment, that the internet mob had gone too far, that she deserved a chance at redemption. Think pieces proliferated. When does justice become vengeance? The dangers of trial by social media. Karen Whitmore and the court of public opinion. Emma tried to ignore them, but the doubt crept in anyway. Late at night, when Hoa was asleep and the house was quiet, Emma would lie awake wondering if she was being vindictive. If pushing for a trial instead of accepting the settlement was about justice, or about making Karen suffer the way Emma had suffered watching her daughter bleed. Then she'd remember the sound of Hoa's head hitting concrete, and the doubt would evaporate. The third card fell 2 weeks before trial, and it was spectacular. Douglas Brennan, Karen's lead attorney, withdrew from the case. The motion was filed on a Friday afternoon, citing irreconcilable differences with the client regarding case strategy. Legal analysts immediately began speculating. Had Karen been refusing to consider plea deals? Had she been uncooperative? Had she done something to make continued representation impossible? The truth emerged 3 days later, when a paralegal from Brennan's firm leaked emails to a legal gossip blog. In the emails, Karen had repeatedly dismissed her lawyer's advice, insisted she'd be acquitted because juries sympathize with mothers, and demanded they go on the offensive against Emma, suggesting they argue Emma had coached Hoa to lie, that the injury wasn't serious, that Emma was exploiting the situation for money. The emails were damning. They showed a woman completely detached from reality, unable to accept responsibility, convinced her privilege would ultimately protect her. Brennan's withdrawal left Karen scrambling to find new representation less than 2 weeks before trial. She eventually hired Marcus Chen, no relation to Emma, a criminal defense attorney known for taking controversial cases. He was competent but not prestigious, and his late entry into the case meant he had minimal time to prepare. Patricia called it a gift from the legal gods. Emma called it terrifying, because a desperate attorney with nothing to lose might try anything. 1 week before trial, Emma received an unexpected visitor. She opened the door to find an elderly woman standing on her porch, leaning heavily on a cane. The woman's face was lined with age and illness, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Ms. Chen, I'm Martha Whitmore, Karen's mother." Emma's hand tightened on the doorknob. "You shouldn't be here." "I know I'm not here to defend what Karen did. I'm here to apologize." Martha's voice cracked. "My daughter hurt your baby. I watched the videos. I saw what she did, and I'm so sorry." Emma wanted to slam the door, wanted to call Morrison and report the contact, wanted to protect herself from whatever manipulation this might be. But Martha looked genuinely broken. "Would you like to come in?" Emma heard herself say. They sat in the living room, an awkward silence stretching between them. Finally, Martha spoke. "I failed as a mother, I see that now." She twisted her hands in her lap. "Corinne was my first child. I was young, overwhelmed. Her father traveled constantly for work. Corinne learned early that if she was loud enough, demanding enough, she'd get what she wanted, and I let her. I took the path of least resistance." "Mrs. Whitmore, please let me finish. I need to say this." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "By the time I realized what I'd created, this entitled, angry person who couldn't handle being told no, it was too late. Corinne was an adult. She'd married Richard. She had money and status and a whole life built on the idea that she deserved whatever she wanted." Martha looked directly at Emma. "I'm dying, pancreatic cancer, stage 4. I have maybe 6 months. And I'll die knowing I raised someone who hurt a child because she couldn't control her temper." Emma felt her throat tighten. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand. Corinne wasn't born cruel. She was made cruel by me, by her father, by everyone who enabled her instead of stopping her. She needs consequences. She needs to face what she's done. Don't feel guilty about the trial. Don't let anyone tell you you're being vindictive." Martha's voice strengthened. "You're giving my daughter something no one ever gave her before, real accountability. Maybe it's too late for her to change, but maybe it's not. Either way, she needs this." After Martha left, Emma sat in silence for a long time. She thought about cycles of behavior, about how cruelty was learned, about whether anyone was beyond redemption. Then she went upstairs and checked on Hoa, who was doing homework at her desk, the pink scar at her hairline catching the light. "Mama, I'm writing about what I want to be when I grow up," Hoa said cheerfully. "I want to be a doctor like Daddy." Emma's heart clenched. "That's a wonderful goal, sweetheart. Mrs. Patterson said doctors help people who are hurt, like the doctors who helped me when the mean lady pushed me." Hoa's voice remained matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather. "I want to help people too." Emma hugged her daughter, breathing in her shampoo-scented hair, feeling the small, steady heartbeat against her chest. Whatever sympathy Emma might have felt for Corinne evaporated. Because Hoa, sweet, resilient, 5-year-old Hoa, wanted to heal people even after being hurt. Corinne Whitmore had hurt people her entire life and never learned anything from it. Some people deserved redemption, and some people needed to face justice first. The night before trial, Emma couldn't sleep. She stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the quiet suburban street, thinking about tomorrow. The trial would be a circus. The courtroom would be packed with media, spectators, people who'd followed the case online. Every moment would be scrutinized, analyzed, turned into content. Corinne would sit at the defense table with her new lawyer, probably dressed in another conservative outfit designed to make her look sympathetic. She'd cry on cue. She'd express remorse she didn't feel. She'd perform contrition like she'd performed everything else in her life. But the videos didn't lie. The witnesses wouldn't lie. The truth was simple. A grown woman had deliberately tripped a 5-year-old child, causing serious injury because she was having a tantrum over pool chairs. Everything else, the media circus, the social media fury, the political implications, the family drama, was noise. At the center of it all was a simple question. Would Corinne Whitmore be held accountable for hurting a child? Emma's phone lit up with a text from Patricia, "Ready for tomorrow." Emma typed back, "As ready as I'll ever be." "Good, we're going to win this. Not just for Hoa, for everyone who's ever been hurt by someone like Corinne and told to just let it go. Sleep well." Emma looked at her daughter's closed bedroom door, thought about David, thought about the long road that had led to tomorrow. Then she climbed into bed and surprisingly slept. Because she'd done everything she could. The rest was up to justice. And tomorrow, justice would finally have her day in court. Across town, Corinne Whitmore sat in her dark house, both ankle monitors blinking steadily, her phone silent, her life in ruins. She drafted 17 different statements of remorse, each one sounding more hollow than the last. Her new lawyer had told her what to say, how to act, how to perform contrition for the jury. But alone in the dark, Corinne finally let herself think the thought she'd been avoiding for weeks. "I did this. Not the media, not the mob. not Emma Chen's vindictiveness or Richard's betrayal or bad luck. I hurt a child because I was angry, and now I have to face what I've done. The realization brought no peace, only a cold, creeping terror of what tomorrow would bring. Because tomorrow, 12 strangers would decide her fate. And Corinne Whitmore, for the first time in her entitled, consequence-free life, had no idea if she'd survive what was coming. Justice was no longer an abstract concept. It was real, immediate, and absolutely unavoidable. And it was coming for her at 9 a.m. sharp. The courthouse steps were a war zone. Emma arrived at 8:30 a.m., clutching her mother's hand while Patricia Kingsley carved a path through the crowd. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing, microphones thrust like weapons. "Ms. Chen, how are you feeling? Do you think Corinne Whitmore will be convicted? Is Hoa testifying today?" Patricia's voice cut through the chaos. "My client has no comment at this time. Please respect her privacy." They pushed through the doors into the relative quiet of the courthouse lobby. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. After months of waiting, of fighting, of watching Corinne's life disintegrate while Hoa slowly healed, they'd finally reached the moment of truth. Detective Morrison waited near the security checkpoint, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Chen, Mrs. Chen," he nodded to both women. "Courtroom's already filling up. It's going to be standing room only." "Is she here yet?" Emma asked, adding how her voice shook. "Came in through the side entrance 20 minutes ago, trying to avoid the cameras." Morrison's jaw tightened. "She looks terrible, good." They passed through security and climbed the stairs to courtroom 4B. Morrison was right. The gallery was already packed. Emma recognized faces from the pool, from the neighborhood, from news broadcasts. Sarah Martinez, the teacher who'd filmed the incident, caught Emma's eye and nodded solemnly. And there, at the defense table, sat Corinne Whitmore. Morrison was right, she looked terrible. Gone was the polished, entitled woman from the pool. Corinne's face was gaunt, her eyes hollow and red-rimmed. Her conservative gray suit hung loose on a frame that had lost 20 pounds. Her hair, once perfectly styled, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No jewelry except a plain watch. No makeup except a failed attempt to cover the dark circles under her eyes. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in months. Because she probably hadn't. Corinne's new attorney, Marcus Chen, leaned close to whisper something. Corinne nodded mechanically, her hands clasped so tightly on the table that her knuckles were white. Emma took her seat in the front row of the gallery, directly behind the prosecution table. Jennifer Zhao turned and gave her a confident smile. "We've got this," Zhao mouthed. The bailiff's voice boomed. "All rise. The Superior Court of California, County of Sacramento, is now in session, the Honorable Judge Patricia Mendoza presiding." Judge Mendoza entered with the same steel-spined authority Emma remembered. She settled behind the bench and surveyed the packed courtroom with an expression that suggested she'd tolerate no nonsense. "Please be seated. We're here for the trial of the people versus Corinne Elizabeth Whitmore. Is the prosecution ready?" "Ready, Your Honor." Zhao stood, commanding the room. "Is the defense ready?" Marcus Chen rose. "Ready, Your Honor." "Then let's begin jury selection." The process took 3 grueling days. Potential jurors were questioned extensively about their exposure to the case, their ability to remain impartial despite the viral videos, their feelings about child safety and privilege. Corinne's attorney fought to exclude anyone who'd seen the videos or read about the case, which eliminated roughly 90% of the jury pool. Eventually, they assembled 12 jurors and 4 alternates, a mix of ages, races, and backgrounds: a retired teacher, a construction worker, a stay-at-home dad, a nurse, a software engineer, an accountant, regular people who would decide Corinne Whitmore's fate. Opening statements began on a Thursday morning. Jennifer Zhao approached the jury box, her expression grave. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about a choice. A deliberate choice made by a grown woman to hurt a 5-year-old child because she was angry." Zhao's voice was measured but powerful. On June 8th, Corinne Whitmore went to the Riverside Community Pool. She saw 2 empty chairs. Emma Chen and her daughter Hoa were setting up their things on those chairs. Mrs. Whitmore decided those chairs should be hers. When Ms. Chen politely refused to move, Mrs. Whitmore became enraged. Zhao pressed a button, and the courtroom screen came to life with a still image from the video. Corinne's face twisted in anger, her foot extended. Hoa mid-fall. You'll see this video from 3 different angles. You'll see Mrs. Whitmore deliberately stick out her foot. You'll see 5-year-old Hoa Chen fall. You'll hear the sound of her head hitting concrete. You'll see the blood pooling on the pool deck. Zhao's voice hardened. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. This was assault. Mrs. Whitmore chose violence over walking away, and that choice sent a child to the hospital with a concussion and 12 stitches. Zhao turned to face Karen directly. The defense will try to convince you this was an accident, that Mrs. Whitmore didn't mean to hurt anyone, but you'll see the video. You'll hear from witnesses, and you'll know the truth. Karen Whitmore deliberately hurt a child because she couldn't control her temper, because she believed she was entitled to whatever she wanted, because she'd never faced real consequences before. Zhao paused, letting the words sink in. 5-year-old Hoa Chen went to a public pool to swim on a summer day. She left in an ambulance with blood on her face. That's not an accident, that's assault, and Mrs. Whitmore needs to be held accountable. The courtroom was silent as Zhao returned to her seat. Marcus Chen stood, and Emma braced herself. He walked slowly to the jury box, his expression thoughtful. Ladies and gentlemen, no one is disputing that a child was hurt. No one is disputing that it's tragic. My client is devastated by what happened. Chen gestured to Karen, who dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Karen Whitmore is a mother of 2. She would never, ever intentionally hurt a child. Emma's hands clenched into fists. What the prosecution calls a deliberate assault was a tragic accident in a moment of stress and confusion. Yes, Mrs. Whitmore was frustrated. Yes, she'd had a verbal disagreement with Ms. Chen, but frustration doesn't equal intent to harm. The prosecution wants you to believe my client calmly calculated a way to hurt a child. That's absurd. What actually happened is that in a crowded, chaotic pool environment, little Hoa ran near Mrs. Whitmore, who was standing still, and accidentally tripped. Chen pressed his own button, freezing the video at a different moment. Look at my client's face. Does this look like someone who intended to hurt a child, or does it look like someone who's shocked and horrified by an accident? The freeze frame showed Karen's face immediately after Hoa fell, eyes wide, mouth open. Emma had to admit it looked like genuine shock. The prosecution has a narrative, Chen continued. An entitled, privileged woman deliberately assaults a poor, innocent child. It's a compelling story. It fits our cultural moment. But it's not true. What's true is that Karen Whitmore made an error in judgment by arguing with Ms. Chen. What's true is that a child was hurt in a terrible accident. What's not true is that my client committed assault. Chen returned to his seat, and Emma felt a chill run down her spine. He was good. Not as good as Brennan would have been, but good enough to plant doubt. Judge Mendoza checked her watch. We'll take a 15-minute recess, then begin with the prosecution's first witness. Jennifer Zhao called Detective Morrison first. He took the stand with the confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times, outlined the initial call, his arrival at the scene, the witness statements, the videos, the arrest. In your professional opinion, Detective Morrison, was this an accident? Zhao asked. No, I've investigated hundreds of assaults. I know the difference between an accident and a deliberate act. Mrs. Whitmore's body language, her positioning, the timing, it was all intentional. On cross-examination, Marcus Chen tried to shake him. Detective, you said you arrived after the incident occurred, correct? Correct. So you didn't actually witness what happened. I reviewed video evidence from 3 angles and interviewed 12 witnesses. I don't need to witness an assault personally to determine one occurred. But your interpretation of the video is subjective, isn't it? Someone else might see an accident where you see intent. Someone else might, but I've been a detective for 15 years. I trust my professional judgment. Chen didn't land any significant blows. Next came Sarah Martinez, the teacher who'd filmed the incident. I saw the whole thing, Sarah said, her voice steady despite obvious nerves. Mrs. Whitmore was angry, really angry. I actually started recording because I thought she might do something. I've seen her have confrontations at the pool before, and this one felt different, more intense. What did you see? Zhao asked. I saw Mrs. Whitmore position herself directly in Hoa's path. I saw her look at the little girl, calculate, and then stick out her foot. It was deliberate. There's no question in my mind. Marcus Chen tried to suggest Sarah's view had been obstructed, that she'd misinterpreted what she saw, that her prior negative interactions with Karen had biased her testimony. Sarah didn't budge. I know what I saw. I'm a teacher. I've seen adults hurt children before, and I know the difference between an accident and intent. That was intent. 3 other witnesses testified, all corroborating Sarah's account, all describing Corinne's anger, her deliberate positioning, the terrible sound of Hoa's head hitting concrete. By the end of the first day of testimony, the prosecution had built an airtight case. But Emma knew the hardest part was still coming. Day 2 began with medical testimony. Dr. Richard Palmer, the emergency room physician who treated Hoa, explained the severity of her injuries in clinical detail. The patient presented with a 3-inch laceration to the scalp, significant blood loss, and altered consciousness consistent with concussion. The CT scan showed no skull fracture, but the impact was severe enough to cause traumatic brain injury. Dr. Palmer's voice was professional but tinged with anger. In my 30 years as an ER physician, I've treated many injured children. This wasn't a minor bump. This was a serious head trauma that could have been much worse. What's the long-term prognosis? Zhao asked. Most children recover fully from concussions, but there can be lasting effects. Headaches, concentration issues, emotional regulation problems. We won't know the full extent for years. Marcus Chen's cross-examination was brief. There was no way to minimize a concussion and 12 stitches. Then Zhao played the videos. All 3 of them, from beginning to end. The courtroom watched in absolute silence as the scene unfolded on the large screen. Corinne and Emma's argument, Corinne's positioning, the deliberate foot extension, Hoa's fall, the sickening crack, the blood spreading across the deck, Emma screaming, Corinne's face cycling from shock to calculation to fear. Several jurors looked visibly upset. One woman wiped tears from her eyes. When the videos ended, Zhao let the silence stretch for a long moment. The defense will tell you those videos show an accident, she finally said. I ask you to trust your own eyes. Then came the moment Emma had been dreading. The prosecution calls Emma Chen to the stand. Emma's legs felt like water as she walked to the witness box. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat down, acutely aware of every eye in the courtroom watching her. Zhao's questioning was gentle but thorough. Emma recounted the day, arriving at the pool, finding the chairs, Corinne's confrontation, the escalation, watching Hoa fall, the hospital, the stitches, the concussion, the nightmares that followed. Ms. Chen, in your own words, do you believe Mrs. Whitmore deliberately hurt your daughter? Yes, Emma's voice was steady. I saw her face. I saw her make the decision. She was angry at me and she hurt my child to punish me. That's what happened. Marcus Chen approached for cross-examination, his expression sympathetic but probing. Ms. Chen, I'm sorry for what happened to your daughter, truly. But isn't it possible you're misinterpreting what you saw because you were emotionally involved? No, I know what I saw. You were upset, correct? Angry at Mrs. Whitmore. I was frustrated but calm until she hurt Hoa. But you refused to move when Mrs. Whitmore asked you to, which escalated the situation. Emma felt her temper flare. I refused to give up chairs that were empty and available because a stranger demanded them. That's not escalation. That's standing my ground. Some might say it was stubborn. Some might say Corinne Whitmore was entitled and couldn't handle being told no. A ripple of reaction moved through the gallery. Judge Mendoza's gavel cracked once. Order. Marcus Chen tried several more angles, suggesting Emma had coached Hoa, implying the lawsuit was motivated by money, questioning whether Emma's grief over David had made her oversensitive. Emma shut down every attempt calmly, firmly, truthfully. When she finally stepped down, Zhao gave her a small nod of approval. The prosecution rested after lunch. Marcus Chen called his first defense witness, a forensic analyst who'd reviewed the videos and testified that absolute certainty about intent is impossible from video evidence alone. Zhao destroyed him on cross-examination, getting him to admit he'd been paid $15,000 for his testimony, and that the videos clearly showed Corinne extending her foot in Hoa's path. Chen called 2 of Corinne's friends, who testified that she was a devoted mother who volunteered at her children's school and would never hurt a child. Zhao got both to admit they hadn't witnessed the incident and that their testimony was based on their personal relationship with Corinne, not the facts of the case. Then came the moment that would define the trial. The defense calls Karen Whitmore to the stand. Karen stood slowly, her legs visibly shaking. She walked to the witness box like someone approaching the gallows, took the oath, and sat down, her hands trembling in her lap. Marcus Chen began with softball questions, her background, her children, her charity work, slowly building a portrait of a normal woman who'd made a terrible mistake. Mrs. Whitmore, tell the jury what happened at the pool that day. Karen's voice was barely audible. I was having a bad day. My mother had just been diagnosed with cancer. I wasn't thinking clearly. I saw those chairs and thought they were the ones my friend had saved for us. When Ms. Chen said they were hers, I got frustrated. I shouldn't have argued with her. I should have just walked away. What happened when Hoa fell? I was standing there upset, not really paying attention. The little girl ran past me and suddenly she was falling. Karen's voice broke. I didn't stick my foot out on purpose. I would never hurt a child. Never. I have children of my own. I know what Ms. Chen must have felt, seeing her daughter hurt. It haunts me every day. Tears streamed down Karen's face. Emma couldn't tell if they were real or performance, and that uncertainty made her furious. Do you regret what happened? Chen asked. More than anything in the world. I would give anything to take it back. I'm so sorry. Karen looked directly at Emma for the first time since the trial began. I'm sorry I argued with you. I'm sorry your daughter was hurt. I'm sorry for everything. If I could trade places with Hoa, if I could be the one who was hurt instead, I would. I swear I would. The courtroom was silent. Then Jennifer Zhao stood for cross-examination, and Emma saw something predatory flash across her face. Mrs. Whitmore, you say you would never hurt a child, but you did hurt a child, didn't you? It was an accident. Yes or no, did Hoa Chen get hurt? Yes, but... And were you responsible for her being hurt? Not intentionally. Mrs. Whitmore, answer the question. Were you responsible for Hoa being hurt? Karen's composure cracked. Yes. You say you weren't paying attention, that Hoa just ran past you, but you'd just been arguing with her mother, correct? Yes. You were angry. I was frustrated. Angry enough to tell Ms. Chen that your husband was on the city council, and you could have her thrown out. I was upset. I wasn't thinking clearly. Upset enough to deliberately position yourself in a 5-year-old's path and stick out your foot. No, that's not what happened. Zhao pressed the button and the video began playing again. Let's watch this together, Mrs. Whitmore. Watch your own actions. The courtroom watched as Karen turned, tracked Hoa's movement, positioned herself, and extended her foot. Mrs. Whitmore watched the screen. What are you doing right there? I'm just standing. You're turning to look at Hoa. I'm looking around. You're tracking her movement, there. Do you see yourself tracking her? And there, do you see yourself positioning your body? And there, extending your foot directly into her path. Karen stared at the screen, watching her own actions play out, and something broke behind her eyes. I was angry, she whispered. What was that? I was angry. Karen's voice cracked across the courtroom. I was furious. I hate being told no. I hate people who don't show me respect. I wanted to... She stopped, realizing what she was about to say. You wanted to what, Mrs. Whitmore? Silence. You wanted to hurt Ms. Chen's daughter, to punish Ms. Chen for refusing to obey you. I didn't mean for her to get hurt that badly. Karen's hand flew to her mouth, horror dawning as she realized what she'd just admitted. The courtroom erupted. Judge Mendoza's gavel cracked repeatedly. Order, order. But the damage was done. Karen Whitmore had just confessed. On the stand. Under oath. In front of a jury, a packed courtroom, and the media. Marcus Chen's face had gone pale. He stood, trying to salvage something. Your Honor, I'd like to request a recess. Motion denied. Ms. Zhao, do you have further questions? No, Your Honor. I think Mrs. Whitmore has said enough. Karen stumbled from the witness stand, tears streaming down her face, her lawyer whispering frantically in her ear. But there was nothing to be done. The confession stood. Closing arguments were almost anticlimactic. Zhao summarized the evidence, emphasized Karen's own admission, and told the jury that justice required accountability. Marcus Chen did his best, arguing that Karen's statement had been taken out of context, that she was emotionally distraught, that the prosecution had badgered her into saying things she didn't mean. But everyone in that courtroom knew the truth. Corinne Whitmore had done it, and she'd finally admitted it. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Emma sat in a conference room with Patricia and her mother, unable to eat, unable to think, unable to do anything but wait. When the bailiff finally called them back to the courtroom, Emma's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst. The jury filed in. Emma tried to read their faces, looking for any sign of which way they'd voted. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Mendoza asked. The forewoman stood, the retired teacher. "We have, Your Honor." "What say you?" "In the matter of the people versus Corinne Elizabeth Whitmore, on the charge of assault in the 2nd degree, we find the defendant guilty." The courtroom exploded. Corinne collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Emma felt her mother's hand squeeze hers, felt tears streaming down her own face, felt something enormous and heavy lift from her chest. "Guilty. Justice." Finally, Judge Mendoza's gavel cracked until order was restored. "Mrs. Whitmore, you've been found guilty of assault in the 2nd degree. Sentencing will be scheduled for 3 weeks from today. Until then, you'll remain on bail under your current conditions. This court is adjourned." Outside the courthouse, the media descended like locusts. Emma stood at the microphone, her voice steady despite the tears still wet on her cheeks. "Today, justice was served. Corinne Whitmore was held accountable for hurting my daughter. That's all I ever wanted, accountability, not revenge, not destruction, just consequences for actions." Emma paused. "I hope she gets the help she needs. I hope she learns from this. And I hope other people who think their privilege makes them above the law see this verdict and understand. No one is above accountability. No one gets to hurt children without consequences." 3 weeks later, Corinne Whitmore stood before Judge Mendoza for sentencing. "Mrs. Whitmore, you deliberately hurt a 5-year-old child because you couldn't control your temper. The psychological evaluation shows deep-seated entitlement issues and a pattern of aggressive behavior. I'm sentencing you to 4 years in state prison, with eligibility for parole after 2 years. You'll also be required to complete anger management and therapy programs, and upon release, you'll perform 500 hours of community service working with child safety organizations." 4 years. Corinne was led away in handcuffs, her face blank with shock. Emma watched her go and felt empty, not triumphant, not satisfied, just tired. Patricia hugged her. "We won." "I know. The civil case will settle now. You'll get your money, and more importantly, you got justice." Emma nodded, but her eyes were on Hoa, who was sitting with Linda, coloring in a princess book, oblivious to the weight of the moment. That night, Emma tucked Hoa into bed and kissed her forehead, careful of the fatting scar. "Mama, why are you crying?" "I'm just happy, baby. Because the mean lady has to go away. Because you're safe, because justice happened. Because you can grow up knowing that even when bad things happen, good people fight to make them right." Hoa considered this with the seriousness of 5-year-olds. "Like Daddy did." "Yes, sweetheart, like Daddy did." Emma turned off the light and closed the door, then stood in the hallway and finally let herself break down. Sob after sob after sob, releasing months of fear and rage and exhaustion. Her phone buzzed. A text from Detective Morrison. "Justice Hoa got her day. Your husband would be proud." Emma smiled through her tears. Yes, she thought, David would be proud. Not because Corinne Whitmore was going to prison, but because his daughter, brave, resilient, beautiful Hoa, would grow up in a world that had shown her that justice, however imperfect, however slow, was still possible. That people who hurt others could be held accountable. That privilege wasn't invincibility. And that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys won.